The federal Liberals are introducing new bail reform legislation today aimed at keeping violent and repeat offenders off the streets by making it harder to get bail. To discuss this, we're joined now by Rob Dhanu. A former Crown prosecutor, is now a criminal defense lawyer. Good morning, Rob. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here bright and early, Jason.
All right, so what are some of the changes Carney is proposing, and how are they different from the current rules?
Well, do you want the good news first or the bad news?
Give us the good news.
Okay, good news is 2 big points. So one of the things that we're not talking about as much is that Mark Carney has promised $1.8 billion over 4 years for the RCMP, as well as 150 extra RCMP officers for higher level crimes. This is great. There's a reason why the U.S. is so good at prosecuting complicated crimes as well as transnational crimes, because they throw a lot of money and resources after it, and that's what we need. Now, the second piece of good news is that most of this legislation should be constitutional, unlike other slogans we hear, such as jail, not bail, which would be unconstitutional right from the start.
Okay, so take us through the impact it will have on the certain crimes and criminals this would apply to.
All right, so there's 4 big pillars to this legislation, and unfortunately, the $50 million question is, are we going to see an impact on the streets because of this legislation? And I would have to say it's a resounding no. And I'll blast through this pretty quick. The first big pillar is reverse-onus, which means that the accused will have to show why they should be released rather than the Crown showing why that the accused should be kept in custody. Now, the problem is that we already have reverse-onus provisions for organized crime, for terrorism, and interestingly, 2 years ago, Bill C-48 introduced 2 more reverse-onus provisions, and those were with regard to violent offenders who are repeat offenders, as well as repeat domestic violent offenders. And the question is, do we feel safer now today as opposed to 2 years ago? I would say we feel perhaps worse. The other big pillar is consecutive sentences. Mark Carney says that we're now going to have consecutive sentences. This is another rewrap. We already have consecutive sentences. Judges have to consider if offenses take place at a different time or if they're more serious, and they impose sentences that are consecutive rather than concurrent to one another. Third big pillar, Mark Carney says that we're going to have higher maximum sentences for theft. This is a signal to judges, which is good, but the maximum sentence is imposed in the extreme minority of cases, so it's not going to have a big impact. And lastly, Mr. Carney says that we're not going to have conditional sentence orders for certain sexual offenses. Well, this has already gone before the Supreme Court of Canada before for a charter challenge, and will be challenged once again.
All right, so is the possibility of serving more time or being denied bail, will it be an actual deterrent for those types of criminals?
Well, no, it's not, because those types of criminals, the majority of criminals have mental health issues, addiction issues. They're not thinking ahead before they commit crime. So let's take a look at the United States. The United States has 5% of the world's population and 20% of inmates. It's far more, deterrence is a far bigger principle there than it is here. But what we're hearing on the streets and in politics in the United States is that our streets are still full of lawlessness and disorder.
So how will this affect the prison system then in Canada? Violent and repeat offenders are incarcerated for longer periods of time, possibly.
Well, this is also interesting because, in fact, the statistics show that we are actually incarcerating more people. And some of the best stats come out of Ontario. So 5 years ago, 57% of people were on bail in Ontario. Today, it's 50%. So there's more people in custody. A year ago, we had 20% less people waiting for their trial in custody as opposed to out. So there's 20% more people in custody today. Our jails are already bulging at the seams, and it costs about $100,000 to keep an inmate housed in 1 year, and for a max facility, $200,000. So if we want more people in prison, we're going to have to pay for it.
Really quickly, Rob, finally, so you believe these proposed changes will not reduce the tendency of a convicted criminal to reoffend?
Unfortunately not. We need to take a look at not the laws, which are actually working, but the process. So in Manitoba, the prosecutors actually filed a grievance saying we need 20% more prosecutors. So we need more people on the ground, prosecution, police, and take a look at what's not working in the system and fix that.
Appreciate your insight this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.